Aashima Gupta from Google, and certainly Joanne Waters from Information Media Corporation, and the one and only Greg Butler, a senior fellow at HITLAB in medication adherence technologies and innovations. And really looking forward to this next session to talk about what medication adherence technologies are doing in clinical trials and how that's impacting the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So again, really happy to have everyone join us here today. And, again, I think it's really important that as we're looking at all of the digital technologies in the ecosystem, whether it's with the folks from the AMA or whether it's with the various digital health companies that are focused on physicians and certainly folks that are focused on clinical trials that helped accelerate an unprecedented development of several vaccines, 3 that really worked in terms of COVID, the development of digital technologies that can aid and can accelerate the clinical trial process has been enormous and has absolutely been life-changing for people around the planet. It's not only unprecedented in terms of the development of a vaccine, but also it's unprecedented in terms of the implementation of a vaccine globally. So upwards of 3 billion people now have been vaccinated out of a world of 8 billion people. It's just, other than the eradication of smallpox and certified in 1979, that 20-year effort that took the World Health Organization to eradicate a disease that killed 200,000 and scarred 2 million people every year for literally over 1,000 years. Now we're looking at the development of technologies that can help clinical trials really accelerate their role in life-saving medicines. And along those lines, let's start off the panel by having some brief introductions from our wonderful panelists. And Aashima, lead the way. Just a minute about yourself and a minute about what you do at Google.
Well, thank you, Stan. First of all, it's a really pleasure to be here. Very timely topic. Aashima Gupta. I'm the Global Director for Healthcare in Google Cloud. Been in the role 7 years. In my role, I have 3 big responsibilities. One is our forward-thinking solutions, which are tuned to industry. The second is working with our design partner. We call them customers like the Mayo Clinic, the HCA, really thinking what those trends are, where we as a technology company build some of these assets internally. And third is industry engagement in terms of hearing from the stakeholders, policy. As an example, interoperability, I've been very, very passionate about that. So presenting our interoperability point of view, working with the CMS, with different industry bodies to push that agenda. So happy to be here and looking forward to the panel.
Happy to have you, and really very honored to have you on as well. And also honored to have Joanne Waters, a veteran now of almost 3 decades of digital health technologies and clinical trials. Joanne, thank you for joining us today. If we could also get a minute about your own journey and a minute about what you do at Information Media, that'd be great.
Thank you, Stan. Very nice to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. Yes, as Stan has mentioned, veteran, senior, however you wish to call that. Over 30 years working in innovative technologies, and of that, the last 17, 18 years has been with IMC in digital health technologies. My primary role is to work with clients to help them understand what it is that we offer with regards to smart packaging and adherence solutions, and how does that work in clinical trials and the benefits of using such tools. So very excited to explain a little bit of that as we go on in our panel here today.
That's fantastic. Looking forward to it. And then, of course, the one and the only Greg Bauer, HITLAB's only senior fellow in medication adherence technologies. Greg, a minute about your journey and a minute about what you do at HITLAB.
Yeah. Thanks, Stan. Yeah, it's great to be on the panel with these folks. I've been involved in digital health for about 12 years and actually wound up getting my master's in healthcare delivery from Mount Sinai about 5 years ago. I've been with the lab as a senior fellow, and then I'm also doing a lot of strategic work on behalf of startups and folks, and have been working really closely in the diffusion efforts with Joanne and the IMC team. And I concur. I think there's some really fascinating stuff going on that you all are tapping into, and we'll talk more about that. But yeah.
That's wonderful. That's great. And going back to you, Aashima, if you could give us a little bit of background about some of the technologies that you're seeing help improve health equity, again, not just in the United States, but also around the world.
I think so. This was, by the way, the big topic at HIMSS as well. Health equity is a cornerstone of many conversations inside of HIMSS, outside of HIMSS, and how we are working with many of our systems globally. It still remains a very humbling and sobering reality. And it's a complex one, right? So there are inequities that exist on many levels, and the impact of the distribution of health outcomes and opportunities globally is uneven. And some of the stats, and I don't need to preach to the choir here, people experience their health can be very, very different. And for example, there's 1.5 to 2 times more likely to be uninsured from the Black and Latina populations. 60% or more are not likely to go to a doctor or care facility. Now, ER is a different kind of care setting. Black mothers have 3 times higher the maternal mortality rate. So with these as a backdrop, the conversation is now changing to what are the practical tools, and what we talk about at Google is information is a determinant of health. So when we talk about social determinants of health, what is the role that technology can play? And technology can be good and bad, right? So for example, a very practical example I'll give. So prior to joining Google, I was with Kaiser Permanente, right? So when we're talking about patient portals, they require a whole desktop. So when a technology like phones came in, like an Android phone, they are available to people. People are able to interact, right? So to me, that is where technology became an equalizer in terms of patient access. You don't need, like when I talk about my own mother, she's at a different age. So the patient access technology can be that equalizer. Then we talk about the technologies like generative AI, and we launched MedPalm, very proud of bringing that to limited set, but there needs to be a responsible path to that, right? Are we bringing this technology? Would they amplify the inequities that exist? And I think that there was a lot of discussion on these technologies at the HIMSS stage, main stage as well. And we need to get it right as an ecosystem. What inequities would this model learn from and amplify, versus what are the guardrails that we need to put in place for equity, for bias, that they don't cause the harm to the patients, to the providers. And I think that will be the next few months to build those guardrails, and it will be important. I know there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of excitement. We are an AI first company from Google perspective, very, very excited about the possibilities ahead, but also the safety over speed is my key message. Things are moving, but we need to have this safe, bias-free kind of way, and I think that's where the industry has to come together on what those guardrails we need to create.
That's fantastic and really well said, Aashima. Thank you for that. And I think just for the audience, when we talk about health equity, what are we talking about? And just as a quick reminder, refresher, since I've been teaching this for over 30 years in technology, health equity is really this definition of helping folks attain the most that they can attain for their best in healthcare. And it really is this ability to provide healthcare in a fair way to people, not just here in the US, but around the world. And when we look at the smallpox eradication movement, that was, again, one of the most ambitious in the world, really from roughly 49 to 79. That was one of the most incredible movements in health equity. We look at certainly the polio movement and digital technologies there that helped and have been helping polio eradication. And then obviously the HIV/AIDS campaign, bringing HIV/AIDS medications to people all over the world at pennies per prescription and pennies per dose. Again, because the wealthier nations were able to make a lot of it, bring the cost productions down, and get the medications out there. And then obviously the COVID vaccine, which is just a stunning illustration, and it'll go down in history as a renaissance in medical care and life sciences. And it is something to be extremely proud of. But this is the idea that medical technology, and certainly like Aashima just talked about, whether it's helping folks in India who are living under bridges have flip phones to understand where antibiotics and vaccines can be attained for their children, or using voice messaging programs that the Gates Foundation has helped promote in Central Africa to help let moms know where not only the vaccines and the antibiotics are, but let moms know where the mosquito netting and the various clean water tools are to reduce infant mortality. So these are the steps in health equity that we're talking about. And it's also information symmetry. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as where is the best cancer medication out there. And that information symmetry, much like Wall Street, and we always talk about that here in New York City, information asymmetry can lead to some of the greatest disparities and in fact, illegal activities when people are dealing in asymmetrical information. We have the same thing here in healthcare technology. Asymmetrical healthcare technology and digital health is obviously an issue that we're trying to reduce. And so going back to you, Joanne, on this very important issue, Information Mediary Corporation has been working toward healthcare equity and has been trying to improve clinical trials and working with life sciences company. You're the only digital health technology and that technology has been used in clinical trials adherence that's gone through a validated study. Truly impressive work that you've done. What kind of healthcare equity elements have you seen the folks and the technologies that you've brought to the market improve, and how has that impacted health equity for what you're doing?
Well, first of all, addressing medication non-adherence and addressing, healthcare, the biggest cost to healthcare, right, is patients not taking medicine as they're supposed to, right? So as technology has evolved, platforms come about, and we can take all of this data. So to start with the basics of this, how do we know when patients take medicine? So first of all, today's standard is basically ask the patient, fill out an electronic diary, fill out a paper diary, or use electronic health records for refill rates and that sort of thing, right? All of that is a mixed form of data and feeds into systems. When you can take something like a smart pill bottle, a smart package, and what does that mean? You can actually open a pill bottle and that time is recorded, right? You can take a blister card that has intelligence built inside and push through the pill, and we know date, we know time, we know dose location, and in the hot places around the world where it's temperature sensitive, we can track that as well. These types of smart products they don't have a language. They can speak no language, but what they do is give us objective timestamps of the very critical, did the patient take the medicine? And when that feeds that level of data, that level of granularity to platforms, helps the AI algorithms increase and strengthen that. And as we were just talking about guardrails. So when you talk about guardrails, well, are you talking about guardrails you're building on a slow country road, which is, I think, where AI might be at right now, right? Or are you talking about AI that's on the Autobahn in the guardrails required for an Autobahn experience? So these are things that using objective data around how patients can take medicine is very critical. But remote monitoring and the decentralized trial designs have really come full force ahead. So it reaches better diversity among populations. And Stan, from these types of data, you can see real-time analytics from different patient populations, different areas, which brings that equity and that diversity to help patients who do need it the most. So it's pretty impressive what technology has done to date and where we're going with it.
I think just to chime in here, Stan, I think, Joanne, to your point, right, technology is a tool that can be used for both good or bad, right?
Yes.
And when we, especially in healthcare and medicine, many talk about technology being a great equalizer, but that doesn't just happen. It's achieved with intentionally thinking about how we build things, whom we build them for, and whom we partner with, and how we market our products, right? So it's that intention and knowing and putting that kind of muscle in the design process with that intention and having a strong intention. That's what I heard at HIMSS as well, right? Technology is great, but what is the forethought and intention that has gone into knowing who are we building this product for?
Well, see, that's the thing, right? So you don't necessarily know who you're building it for until you start to see some data around that population you're building it for, right? So it's a continuous change once you get more data and see how that patient population or that area does with dosing and medication. And then that just makes everything that much better and that much more, actionable, shall we say? Yeah.
That's brilliant. And remember, I think that it's important to understand how this threads back into American democracy, right? Really, the Constitution was based upon fairness, and our democratic norms are based upon fairness. And if we look at Social Security, if we look at Medicare, if we look at Medicaid, all of these institutions are based upon fairness and equity in our own American healthcare system. And if we look around the world, these are the ideals that people reach for. These are the ideals that people are striving for. And again, looking at what we're seeing within the ecosystem, we're moving toward that way literally every decade, every century. We're moving more and more toward that kind of egalitarian society with the respect to freedoms and rights of all. So Greg, talk a little bit about this. Again, you've been a student of digital health for a long time, and certainly you've been working in business for decades and understand how these sorts of things work, how technologies are adopted by larger ecosystems. From your perspective, and certainly you've written papers on patient centricity and things like this as well. How does patient centricity, and that's a big term being used today, and especially at ViVE and HIMSS in the last 2 months, how does that thread into health equity and what we're seeing with digital technology adoption?
Thanks, Fresky. I think it's a really important question. I think when I think about patient centricity, and I think HIMSS touched on it last week, we're really talking about giving care management a greater level of connectivity on the patient's terms, driving engagement levels on the patient's terms, doing the same thing with education and health education around certain conditions or indications. And all of that, if done properly, will allow the patient to experience or have a better experience. And in doing so, I believe that the issue of burden is one that needs to be addressed, because if you're in a rural population or an underserved population, and you look at what the FDA has just come out and said trials must be more equitable and more diverse, well, the trial management people need to think about how they're going to go about designing these trials so that people who are 30, 40 miles away from a trial site can still get the kind of experience. And so to Joanne's point earlier about remote patient monitoring and technologies, decentralized trials, all of these tools are there to reduce the patient burden so the patient can get a better experience and outcome. And I believe what that will do is improve equity improve equity overall for these different populations very much. And I think technology is crucial for it.
Absolutely.
Right, it certainly is, right? And I think we've seen improvements in healthcare through technology. And I think, just for the audience, and certainly I'm sure the panel would agree, and by no means do we think equity is here today. By no means do we think it's an easy ideal to achieve. I think everyone here would agree that equity in its purest form is an ideal that it may never be achievable. But does that mean we stop trying? Never. Does that mean we stop working at it? Never. We're going to work hard. And certainly I know that the good folks at HITLAB are striving to do that every day. And that's their primary mission is to help get there. But the idea that we ignore it and we stop talking about it, never. And so on that note, we've got about 2 minutes left here. If we could just have a summary, maybe, some 1 or 2 sentences of advice that you all would give to our audience. Again, these are folks that are aspiring to bring technology to healthcare to reduce inequities. What would you recommend, and what would you leave our audience with? And Aashima, I'll start with you as well. Go ahead.
Stan, this is an important topic, and my ask of the ecosystem is, no matter what your role is in the ecosystem, if you are a health IT provider, a vendor, a tech company, a researcher, so starting with that intention and being proactive about those architectures that we will create, the work we will do now will have an impact 3 to 5 years down the line. So baking in health equity by designing our architectures, baking in that intentionality about creating those products. I think we would love to see that being built in as a muscle from the get-go versus very, very difficult once you build it and then go go back and fix it. So as you're designing care delivery models, remote patient monitoring, AI, so starting with that proactively is my ask, no matter what our role is.
All right, wonderful, Aashima, thank you. And Joanne.
Well, remote patient monitoring, absolutely, yes. So solutions, yeah, absolutely, Aashima, with intention of what you're doing. The architecture has to be there. The interoperability has to be there. But as per Greg's point too, it's burden, right? So when it comes to helping patients take medicine remotely or on-site or in hospital or in pharmacy, it's about the instruction burden. It's about the technology burden. So the less of all of that, you're targeting the non-adherent patient. So if you do this broad stroke approach and give everyone these tools, you're exacerbating the problem of the non-adherent. So you have to be very thoughtful. Solutions have to be interoperable, simple, and powerful, and proven results, right? And all with de-identified data to protect the patient.
That's fantastic.
See, I'll just follow on that with, at the end of the day, this is about a journey. Healthcare is about a journey. It's 1,000 journeys, but all journeys are geared toward better, improved outcomes. And I think when you look at clinical trials, if you're a trial manager, you're always looking at the next trial that you're going to be doing. You're looking at the data that you're pulling this time to make the next trial more effective as you advance your knowledge and understanding of managing the disease or the condition. So I see it as the technology is the enablement of the journey.
That's great. Thank you, Greg. No, it really is a journey that we're all on together. And again, knowing how busy the three of you are, can't thank you enough for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and looking forward to seeing you all at the Digital Health Summit in June, at the end of June this year for Digital Health Week, New York City. Talk to you later.